Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
And I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. My name is Machel Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. By now, you know the drill. You know what to do. If you're watching on YouTube, look at the ticker tape below. You know where to go. You know that you have to like, share, subscribe to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Should that be something you want to do, whether during this video, at the end of this video, or whatever it might be. But welcome to another edition. A couple of days ago, it was announced the West Indies T20 side was announced. Desmond Haynes, lead selector, announced the squad. I'm just going to actually go and find the kind of blurb, what was released as like, and this is why we picked the squad, and so the kind, you know what they do, the kind of the official reasoning for the selection of the squad. So here we go. Let me just open it up, see what Desmond Haynes' blurb was. So they picked the T20 squad, and Haynes said the following, and I have to start here because my analysis of this T20 squad has to begin by using Desmond Haynes' own words to kind of look at the squad in context, right? So Desmond said, for the T20 internationals, we have a very experienced squad. What we are looking for is to form a cohesive unit and look at the players who we believe can form the nucleus as we build towards doing very well and challenging when we host the ICC Men's T20 World Cup in June 2024. So this is the T20 squad for the South Africa Limited Overs Series, right? And Des has said this squad that is chosen is with a view to looking at the nucleus of the squad for the 2024 World Cup. Now, that kind of terminology and the kind of phrases that is used here are quite key. It's interesting that he said looking at the nucleus to form a cohesive unit ahead of the 2024 World Cup. Keen observers of West Indies cricket, hopefully that's everybody watching this, may remember that the independent report was commissioned by Justice Thompson Jr., Brian Lara, and Mickey Arthur. One of the key kind of takeaways from that report was the need for West Indies to identify a core unit of players and effectively say, you are the players we're taking forward going into the T20 World Cup, right? We're currently in February 2023. So we're approximately, give or take, so March, April, May, give or take, we're just under a year and a half away from our home World Cup. I don't know off the top of my head how many T20 bilaterals we're going to be playing prior to that World Cup actually taking place. Obviously, there'll be bilateral competitions, but in terms of the West Indies as a cohesive unit playing T20s, I need to go back and check just how many bilateral T20 series we're going to be playing. But like I say, interesting that Haynes makes reference to this building of a cohesive squad. So with that in mind, I said, okay, cool. So I read the statement. I said, let me see this squad. And this was the squad that has been announced for the T20 internationals. Rodman Powell captain, Carl Mayers vice captain. No issue with that, by the way. Mayers obviously captained Barbados Royals in the 60 last year. I've got no issue with Mayers being the vice captain. Shamar Brooks, Yannick Correa, Johnson Charles, Sheldon Cottrell, Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Alzari Joseph, Brandon King, Obed McCoy, Nicholas Puran, Raymond Reefer, Romario Shepherd, and Odin Smith. Now, for those of you who are wondering in terms of the T20s, there's 3 T20s in South Africa, the 25th of March, the 26th of March, and then a night game on the 28th of March, right? So they're about a month away, these T20 series. But what was interesting to me, and obviously I've seen all the kind of comments on the forums, in the newspapers, on Sportsmax, on all those kind of different media handles, as well as the kind of like social media angst. I've seen a lot about this T20 side. again, if some of you are watching this, look at the title. This is specifically about the T20 side. I'll do a separate video on the ODI side. Now, the first thing that struck me about this squad is how few changes have been made since the World Cup. In fact, this was the World Cup squad selected. I'm going to give you the original squad that was selected for the World Cup. The one where we didn't even make it through to the main stage. The one where we lost to Ireland, we lost to Scotland, and crashed out in round one, only winning one match out of 3 against Zimbabwe. This was the World Cup squad selected. Nicholas Pooran, Sheldon Cottrell, Rothman Powell, Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Yannick Correa, Alzari Joseph, Johnson Charles, Brandon King, Carl Mayers, Obed McCoy, Raymond Reefer, Evan Lewis, Odin Smith, Shimron Hetmeyer. Obviously, Hetmeyer failed to catch the plane, missed it twice or whatever went on, didn't cross the bridge, and he was replaced by Shamar Brooks. Spot the difference, people. Spot the difference. I'll give you 5 seconds. What's the difference between the World Cup squad that failed, didn't make it to the main round stage, and the first T20 squad that has been selected since the independent report was commissioned and released at the beginning of January? What difference do you see, people? Here's the difference. There has only been one change made between the team that failed ridiculously so at the World Cup and the first T20 squad selected to represent the West Indies. And that change is Evan Lewis out, Romario Shepherd in. So when I saw that, I said, huh? I said, but I was like, but that don't make sense. You couldn't go to a World Cup, perform horribly, and then the selectors in the first bilateral series they come across pick the exact same squad again. So then I said, nah. This can't be right. I said, let me go back and look at what actually happened in the World Cup. And I said, let me just clarify and get straight in my own head who had a good World Cup. And when I went and collated my World Cup data from our failed experience in Australia, I calculated that only 4 players came out of that World Cup who could legitimately hold their heads high and say, you know what, I had an okay World Cup. Some of them had a good World Cup, but my criteria was which players could come out of that World Cup at the back end of 2022 and say, you know what, West Indies, we might have sucked as a whole, but I was okay. And the only 4 players that I wrote down who had an okay to good World Cup were Jason Holder, Alzari Joseph, Brandon King, and Johnson Charles. No one else can say to me that they had a good World Cup. No one else. But okay to good. No one else in the squad can tell me they had an okay to good World Cup. Only those 4 players. So then I said to myself this. If you have a World Cup squad of 15 and only 4 of the 15 can hold their head high after the World Cup, how can you then, in your next bilateral series, travel with the exact same squad again? Help me understand this, people. Please get in the comments below. At us, at Carib Cricket. Help me understand. Am I seeing this wrong? Because I'm not here to say that I'm always right. I think sometimes people watch these kind of Caribbean Cricket podcasts, 15-minute, 20-minute editions. Are like, oh, you're talking a bag of fuckery. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, cool. I'm not here to say I'm always right. What I am here to do is to question things and look for deeper levels of analysis. And I'm always here to look for the justification. And my point here, and the analysis that I'm asking people to bring, an explanation and justification I'm asking people to bring here is, if my team goes to a World Cup and I've selected it and every man flops bar 4, how can I pick every man again? How am I only making one change? And remember, the press release said, for the T20 internationals, we have an experienced squad. Yes, but they failed at the last World Cup. What we are looking for is to form a cohesive unit. Okay, yes, but you took that cohesive unit to the last World Cup. and look at the players who we believe can form the nucleus as we build towards doing very well and challenging when we host the ICC Men's T20 World Cup in June 2024. But you see, I'm a man of balance. So as much as I can cuss it, and as much as I can say, but this don't make sense. How are we not making more changes? How's every man still catching a free ride and getting to experience the T20 squad in South Africa and so on and so forth? So I said, okay, it's one thing for me to say, but they shouldn't be taking the same squad, so on and so forth. So then I said, well, who else could we pick? Who else was out there that Desmond Haynes and Roland Butcher and whoever else is involved in selection, who else could they have picked to replace any of these guys in the squad? Now, I'm going to get to like the Evan Lewis's and the Hetmeyers and all that at the end. But first I said, let me go back to CPL. I said, let me go back to CPL and let me go back to 60. And I said, let me look at the top run scorers, highest wicket takers. And I said, who's there that was missed out? So these are the top run scorers in CPL last year. Bear in mind that CPL is our domestic competition. That doesn't mean we should base selection just off CPL. I think the selectors should be savvy enough to also look at any kind of standout performances they see in BPL, PSL, that international league that happened at the start of the year, the South African league that happened at the start of the year. I would hope and believe, I don't think it's happening, by the way, but I would love to hope and believe that our selectors aren't just basing their selections off CPL. But I am taking the assumption that they are. The CPL, by the way, that finished all the way back in August 2022, which is now 6 months ago. But anyways, I went to pull the data. These are the top run scorers. Brandon King, this is in order, and top West Indian run scorers. I'm not including the overseas players. Brandon King, Carl Mayers, Johnson Charles, Shimron Hetmeyer, Rovman Powell, Shea Hope, Rakeem Cornwall, Shamar Brooks, Andre Fletcher, Raymond Reefer. The only players missing, I think I went to like the top 10 West Indians in CPL last year. So the only players missing from this squad who weren't in the top 10 run scorers last year are Shea Hope, who's just come back from a successful Bangladesh Premier League, by the way, Rakeem Cornwall, and Andre Fletcher. Now, Fletcher, I understand missing out because if you're taking Johnson Charles, you're not taking Andre Fletcher. So then that only leaves Shea Hope and Rakeem Cornwall. I've long believed that West Indies should pick Rakeem Cornwall, but he'll never get a look in. If they won't give him a look in tests, they won't give him a look in white ball cricket either, right? So my question to everybody watching this is, as much as I can say how we pick in the same squad that went to the World Cup and didn't have any success, would any of you pick Shea Hope, Rakeem Cornwall, or Andre Fletcher? Because they're the only 3 out of the top 10 run scorers in CPL 2022 who aren't in this squad. Get at me in the comments below or send an at Carib Cricket on Twitter and Instagram. So then I said, let me look at the bowlers. I said, which bowlers are missing from the top? Who are the top bowlers in CPL? And who's missing from this selected squad? And these were the top West Indian bowlers. In order: Alzari Joseph, Jason Holder, Obed McCoy, Romario Shepherd, Ravi Rampal, Sunil Narain, Fabian Allen. So then I said to myself, okay, cool. Ravi Rampal, obviously, he's too old now. He's not getting in the squad. Played in the 2021 T20 World Cup. His time is done. Fine. The next 2 names and Romario Shepherd, who was the 4th highest West Indian wicket taker in CPL, is back in the squad. He has replaced Evan Lewis in terms of Evan's gone, Romario's in. So cool. Then I looked at the next 2 names. I saw Sunil Narain and I saw Fabian Allen. And I said to myself, are West Indies really in a position where we can afford to tell Sunil Narain and Fabian Allen that we don't need them? I'm not answering that question just yet. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm looking at the stats, I'm looking at the evidence, and I'm just throwing it out there for you lot to chew up. Get at me in the comments below. Are we in a good enough position to turn round to Sunil Narain, who didn't play in 2022, didn't play in 2021? Fabian Allen didn't play in 2022, didn't get in the squad, got injured and didn't play in 2021. Are we saying that they're not good enough to get in this West Indies squad? Are we saying that this cohesive unit that Desmond Haynes says we're building towards our home World Cup in June next year doesn't include a Sunil Narine and a Fabian Allen? I'm just asking the question. So those are the names. If we're gonna base it on West Indian domestic competition, there's only a few names realistically that you could say, well, should they get a look in based on performance in our home tournament? But that's why I'm saying, surely we cannot base selection criteria for the West Indies side just off what we see in CPL. Surely, please God, tell me these selectors are paying attention to all the other franchise leagues that are going on around the world. Surely they are, because we've got players playing in them who are probably playing more recent T20 cricket than CPL in 2022. Shai Hope just went to the Bangladesh Premier League and hit a 90 odd in one of his games. I'm not saying Shai Hope must be in the T20 squad, but he's an example of a player who is playing elsewhere and scoring some runs. So what are we saying, that it's only CPL that counts? What was the justification that was used to select this squad? What data did they use? What set of data did they use to say this is going to form the first selected squad, the first cohesive unit as we plan towards the World Cup next year? What data did they look at after the World Cup finished in Australia in October 2022 to now February 2023 and go, yes, this is why we should select these players? What was the data? What was the criteria? What was the justification? Or was it just, well, boy, there's no cricket going on, so let's just take the same set of man who didn't do well in the World Cup? Help me. Help me understand. Help me. Get at me in the comments below. And then we get to the kind of final key talking point around this. So, like I say, in a lot of the media and a lot of the forums, I've kind of seen, like, I'm not here to get into this video isn't about and who's going to take the new ball and who's going to be the enforcer and who's going to bowl in the middle overs and West Indies tactics in the power play. This isn't that video. Those videos might come later. This video is just looking at the squad selected and what are the key questions coming out of it. So I end this video with this final point. The independent report commissioned by Cricket West Indies specifically stated, get together a core group of 30 odd players and effectively, I'm just paraphrasing, but effectively said, say to them, this is who we're going with. This is who we're going with going into the World Cup next year. We're strategizing, we're planning, we're moving forward into World Cup next year. Now, I would argue that part one of that is we have appointed a brand new T20 captain, Rovman Powell, one CPL with Talawars. Fine. I think most people in the region are fine with that. Most people accept that Rovman is probably the right person to be the new captain after Puran stepped down. Cool. No issues with that. We've still got an interim head coach. Who knows what we're going to do? Are we going to split the roles? Are we going to get a white ball coach? Are we going to get a red ball coach? We don't know any of that. But that would be the next part of the process as well. But the final part of the process, and what I want answers for, is what was clearly stated in the independent report. Sit down with players who have some kind of perceived, grudge is the wrong word, but some kind of perceived grievance, there's a better word, against West Indies cricket or Cricket West Indies. Sit down with them, establish, what's your cricket calendar saying? Establish what needs to happen to get them to represent the West Indies. I'll pause there because I know that some of you, uncles, aunties, whoever is listening to this, will say, nah, a man like Russell must never play for West Indies again. No, Ryan must never play for West Indies again. Shimron must never. I hear all that. Me one. Last year, I was one of the ones saying, I'm done with Shimron Hetmyer, but I'm not stupid. I might be done with Shimron Hetmyer, but I'm not stupid enough to say that West Indies should be done with Shimron Hetmyer. The two things are different. I can be personally done with him. But if West Indies pick him, I'm rallying round Shimron Hetmyer, said same way. My argument is this. It's February 2023. When are we going to have the conversations? It's February 2023. When are we planning to have the conversations? I don't want to hear anyone say to me that Andre Russell can't offer nothing for West Indies cricket. I don't want to hear anyone say to me that Sunil Narayan can't offer nothing for West Indies cricket. I don't want to hear anyone tell me that Shimron Hetmeyer can't offer nothing for West Indies cricket. And I don't want to hear anyone tell me that Evan Lewis can't offer anything for West Indies cricket. Have those 4 players, what do I want to say here? Have those 4 players frustrated the West Indian fan base? 100%. Have those 4 players always been professional with regards to how they deal with West Indies cricket? No, they haven't. Are those 4 players better than some of the players we've selected in our first squad of 2023? 1,000%. Not even 100. 1,000%. Are we good enough to ignore those players? No. We just went to a World Cup with this same squad, and they lost to Ireland and they lost to Scotland, and we crashed out in round 1. So don't tell me that you look at this current squad and say, yeah, we don't need Narayan, we don't need Hetmeyer, we don't need Russell, and we don't need Evan Lewis. The World Cup is in 1 year and 4 months. This is going to Cricket West Indies now. Do whatever you have to do to sit down with these guys and work out what needs to happen to get them to engage West Indies cricket. If when you sit down with them, the conclusion is, boy, these men don't want to play for West Indies, cool. But that doesn't mean that you don't sit down. You have to sit down and have the dialogue first. And if out of that dialogue we can't find middle ground, then cool, we all go our separate ways. But as we go into a home World Cup, we cannot afford to shut our doors on anyone. And that is why fundamentally, when I look at this first squad selected to go to South Africa for 2020 for the bilateral series in March, I'm rallying. I'm supporting, said same way. I will always support any West Indies side that is selected. I'm rallying, said same way. But I am not agreeing with any kind of selection process where we exclude people or we spite ourselves and don't try to sit down and work out the best way forward. If you want my advice of what to do, you sit down with who you consider to be the 30 best T20 players, and that includes people like Fabian Allen. You sit down with who you consider to be the 30 best T20 players in the Caribbean, and you say to all of them, let me know what your schedule is for this year in your franchise schedules. Let us know. Fax over or whatever. Email over your schedule that you've agreed with your agent for this year. Then you say to them, here is the West Indies schedule. Then you say to them, we consider all 30 of you or all 25, whatever the number is. I'm not picking, it doesn't have to be 30. I just picked an arbitrary number. You say to them, we consider all of you important going forward into this World Cup. We'd like to get a chance to play all of you at points across the next year. Who is committed? Let us know now. If we call you up, will you play for West Indies? Let us know now. They send you their calendar. You tell them your intentions. Everybody's got an equal chance of getting picked. I know some of you listening to this will be fundamentally, deep down in your soul, disagree with my approach here. But we've just come off the back of 2 back-to-back World Cups where we flopped. 2021, we only won 1 game in the main stage. We beat Bangladesh, flopped out the World Cup. And that was with the kind of golden oldies side. And everybody said, get rid of them. Get rid of Gale, get rid of Rampal, get rid of Russell, get rid of Pollard, get rid of this man, get rid of Bravo, get rid of that man. Everyone said, the side was too old. That's why. So cool. Selectors listened. Total revamp of the side. Even the captain went. You forced the captain out. We go to the 2022 World Cup with a brand new young side, and they did even worse than the golden oldie side. So my argument is, it's not one extreme to another. You find the happy medium. And that happy medium means that everybody is welcome back. Everyone. My name is Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I reckon some of you are going to be a bit emotional about some of the stuff that I've said there because certain men don't want certain people ever playing for the West Indies again. But either way, I'll never say that I'm right. I just have an opinion. Get at me in the comments below, at us at Carib Cricket if that's what you want to do. I didn't say it at the top. Obviously, like, share, subscribe to Caribbean Cricket Podcast. But if you'd like to support us as well, head to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. And for as little as $2 of whatever your currency is, you can support us and keep us going, help us with the equipment, help us with the hosting costs, so on and so forth. But thank you as ever. That's been another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.